You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Coomer, and as chair, I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation for Tuesday, March 25th.
Recording in progress.
2025. Do I need to repeat now? Okay. I'd like to note for the record, this meeting is being webcast. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting. Are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, we welcome public comment on the items on today's agenda after each item is presented, and any comments are received from directors. We will allow any members of the public attending today to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes and should only address the items under consideration. Also note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on today's agenda items in writing by submitting comments by 3 p.m. yesterday. We did receive 3 written comments from the public, which were provided the directors are posted to this meeting's website, and I'll address those later in the meeting. You'll note that the final item on our agenda today is titled Public Comments. At that time, we'll have the opportunity for any members of the public attending to provide comments on non-agenda related matters. Please keep in mind that it is our intention to try to conclude today's meeting by 5 p.m., which is our allotted time. Now I'd like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. So please make appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We'll then be sure you may recuse yourselves from any discussion or vote with regard to that item. Hearing none, our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the directors' meeting of November 14, 2024. So does anyone have any comments or edits on the minutes? I know I do, but I'll take any that anyone else has first. Okay, go ahead, Ron.
On page 4, on page 7, there's a reference in the 3rd paragraph down, at least in my version, to those carrying loads. I think it really is the carrying capacity of the land that was meant by that.
Okay, so those.
I think since that's sort of a term of art, that it would be good if we could define it. And I have a definition that I downloaded.
Okay, is this a definition of carrying loads or carrying capacity? Okay.
Refers to the maximum number of individuals an environment can support without degrading that environment in urban planning. It refers to the maximum population that a city can support under certain resource and environmental constraints. I would like to just footnote that.
Yeah, well, can we drop a footnote in the meeting minutes?
I can give it to you in writing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, and then, so I think we would then change the term carrying loads to what the carrying capacity, instead of loads are, we would change to carrying capacity is.
I just want to make a note.
it's difficult for us to do sort of like a Monday morning quarterbacking on minutes because things are said at the meeting and minutes are written. So we can, your comments now are addressed in the minutes for this meeting. And we can drop, we'll drop the footnotes in there and that type
Whatever
of
way.
thing. So if it's things that, you're like, oh, I meant to say this or that kind of a thing, we really need to leave it as it is, and then it gets addressed in this meeting's minutes. Okay,
That's
thank you.
fine. Then on page 8, at the bottom there is a.
Especially if you're if you're adding kind of more context or a definition, I would say it would have to be in this meeting's minutes, as opposed to going back
That's
and
fine.
adding words.
Well, okay, but when we get to
There-
my comments, we
There
may have an issue.
there may be
because-
corrections that are.
Well, it's because, it's something in the existing meeting, these minutes got a little drop, garbled or dropped with respect to an exchange that Joel and I had, and I was hoping to correct that. Go ahead, Ron.
On page 8, towards the end, I think it's in the last sentence, it said, his concern is that once there is a private developer, I think we should add the word single private developer, as opposed to just private developer.
Where is this? I'm
Maybe
sorry.
nitpicking. It's the next to last line of the first paragraph on page 8. It may be out of sequence with what you have.
Yeah, well, I mean, a private developer is in the singular form, so I think
That's okay.
yeah,
then.
I think let's.
As long as we understand that. And then further down, I think it would be a lot easier where it says Director Schiffman suggested that they wait until there's a permitted developer. I suggested that ESD wait. So we know who the they is, that's all.
All right.
Nitpicking. And then, those are just notes, I just want to. That's it for me.
Okay. Anybody else? Yep.
I had a couple fairly minor.
Oh, there is one more, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On page 18, there's a reference again to the developers. And so there I say that the number are not being solely driven by the developer's needs, as opposed to being driven by the developer's needs. Obviously, we have to meet the developer's needs, but I don't think it should be only the developer's needs.
Where are we? On 18.
About 5 lines up. Are not being driven, it says, it should be not being solely driven by.
We're on 14.
Oh, we're in 14, not 18.
Okay, that's it.
You mean not being driven solely?
Right.
Okay, you can add solely. That'll be probably more likely reflected in these meetings minutes. Okay, Gib.
On page 19, we were talking about the Atlantic Avenue mixed-use plan, and in the third sentence from the end of the first paragraph, it says what's called the, quote, AIM Up Plan, but that should actually be the acronym AAMUP.
AAM.
Atlantic Avenue Mixed-Use Plan.
Okay.
This is like some of that planning humor. And then in the last sentence of that paragraph, I don't think I would have said a little over $1 million a month, because I know what the number is. It's $1,752,000 a month. So that number should be $1,752,000.
1,752,000 a month.
And that's it for me.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments? I just had one, there was one section, let me just find it, sorry. Okay, it spans, it's the paragraph that stretches across the bottom of 10 to the top of 11, having to do with the, who was going to pay the costs of the consultant. And in the second to last sentence of the paragraph at the top of 11, something got dropped here because what's here does not reflect what I was trying to say. So I think the easiest way to change it is to, in the last clause of the sentence, to say, where the board requests another meeting with this group, comma, only to be told that that goes beyond what was approved. I was saying that's the scenario that I do not want to have facing us. And Joel and I have conferred and agreed that the following sentence could be fixed to say, Mr. Kolkman confirmed that in that situation, we would have the ability to expand the previously approved scope as needed, period. And I can give you this language. And that's it for me.
That paragraph, I think
Okay, where's that?
I would like to see some discussion about clarity of that later on. The
About,
whole idea of one plan or two plans.
oh, I see, okay. That's, all right, well, I guess you can raise that in new business, yeah, all right. Okay, so subject to those corrections, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
One abstention.
Oh,
Wasn't
you,
there.
yes. Please note Mr. Gabriel's abstention. Well taken. All right. So, I'd now like to call on Anna Paisior, ESD's Senior Vice President of Community Relations, to present our next agenda item, which is a request for authorization for this corporation, AYCDC, to approve its fiscal year 2025 to 26 operating budget.
Thank you very much, Chair. So here is the budget projected up here, should be available to anyone watching online as well. As you can see, it has up last year's budget, which you approved, and this year's budget. The proposed budget is in line with last year's. Happy to talk through some of the small differences if there are questions around them, but as you can see, they are largely in line with previous budget.
We have a much better deal on office space.
We do. We do. We no longer charge. Yeah.
So I also was gonna ask, where was the office space, or why was we paying for office space? I'm just trying to get a sense.
When ESD moved, the policy was changed by which we charge the subsidiaries for use of the office space.
But isn't this for a ESD staff person?
No.
No, sorry, the office space for the meetings
The use of the office,
and for the staff. It no longer gets charged to the subsidiary.
well,
Just
I
the
think
staff?
that's very kind of the
Apologies, just the
parent
staff.
agency.
We paid the state aid.
Especially since we only meet in these offices once a year.
No, it's as well. This is staff as well.
Staff
So,
as well,
yeah,
that's
sorry,
true.
apologies.
So this doesn't cover the staff site at 55 Hands End?
We
Well, that's
no
staff.
longer have a staff site at 55 Hanson
Okay.
for the project.
But we still can use
Yeah,
the.
we're still allowed to use the
space.
conference room space there, yes.
Could you just
State
let us
office
know
building, it's a state entity.
who
Just
is
some-
being paid for this and what?
Like, how do you charge me?
Well, we're all throughout the room.
I'm sorry, what was the question, Ron?
Who's being paid by the staff and what their functions are?
I know, but this
So
is-
just for- you with us?
Sorry, hold on, why don't I?
One voice at a time.
Okay, let's, we can't have
Yeah.
cross talk here. So I think the pending question, as I understand it, is
I want to.
that's, you're asking whose salary is reflected in that salary
I
line?
want to get a greater understanding of what we're paying for the personnel line.
Okay,
The top line.
top line. Can that,
It reflects prorated time for the team that works on the project. I mean, there's a number of us.
so it's not for one individual?
No.
I see, it's prorated.
It's prorated, it's
staff
accounted for,
time.
yeah.
I think you would see, right, that we've restructured how we are working on the project, right?
Yes.
Where previously there was one or two individuals that were dedicated. Now you see that we're all here, and it's a much larger team focused on it.
So did you go through a process of determining for each relevant staff member the allocation of their time for the projected for the year?
Projected.
And then you put a number around that?
Yep.
Okay.
And we do that for all the subsidiaries.
All the subsidiaries?
Yeah.
And does some of the cost remain with the mothership? Go ahead.
Are there any resources in this number who aren't in this room?
Other staff.
Other staff, one team member, Joy, who you know.
Joy's been at all of our meetings, right?
Yeah,
So the people who attend the meetings
or who are
regularly
reflected.
are who are
Okay.
reflected there.
Got it. Thank you.
And Drew, did you have a further question about the office space? I didn't want to leave that hanging.
One just was trying to more or less so just identify what we're considering as office space and where is that located, just because for the purpose of the site, know that there was two different locations. One being
Sure,
on-site and then-
I shouldn't have characterized it as the meeting room. It is reflective of the staff space that we no longer have to account for in the upcoming year for the staff that works on this project. We no longer pay towards the space in this building with our new building that ESD moved into.
But that's the reason there's no number in the rightmost column.
So then my only challenge or necessarily concern more or so was thinking about the office space or how it was allocated before, just because I'm thinking about past budgets or in seeing the office space number or not seeing the office space number, if I can remember correctly, but I'm not 100% certain.
I
Because
see.
Yeah,
I
it
thought
was-
the
it
only
was included.
salaries that we proposed or only salaries that we voted on were the ones that were directly impacted to the Atlantic Yards development, being the person that was on site doing the site reviews when we were in the process of doing site 1, 2, and 4. So just trying to get a sense if that has changed and you're now saying the configuration is that salaries and fringe is essentially necessarily divvied up between everyone that has Atlantic Yards under their portfolio.
It is divvied up under the team, a portion of people's time under the team. Is that an answer?
Are you still? Is it about the office occupancy expenses line that you're wondering, or just
So then the
salary?
entire budget, necessarily just looking at it from salaries and then going office space, right? First off of salaries, how I understood it before was more so that those salaries were going to or being directed to the folks that were the point people on Atlantic
Yes,
Yards.
that's how I understood previous budgets.
That's how so that's how I'm looking at it, and you're now saying it's divvied up between everyone, and then also seeing the percentage of, is that roughly about a 28 to 32% fringe rate that we're looking at right there is, or accounting for within the budget for a personnel line, and then just looking at the occupancy in terms of the office. Because it's a state entity that is essentially necessarily paying another state entity, I'm just trying to figure out how does that work? Because if Department of Labor needed to use a conference room at ESD, do they pay a rental fee for it? And if so, what is that rental fee per usage? And would it equal up to that 13,000, being as though we only have a meeting once or twice a month?
Right. Again, it is the office space that the staff is working in. So
like
to the extent that
individual
ESD
offices.
pays for this space,
State
we no
buildings.
longer have to account for it in the AYCDC budget. That we no longer have to account for the office use by the team
The
working on the
mothership is
project.
paying for your offices, the ESD entity.
So-
That's new for,
That's new for this cycle.
accounting for this year.
Due to our,
But
So other subsidiaries that we
Yes.
have, they would historically as well
and no longer.
paid for the desk space for the staff who are working on that project to be here, right?
So
But
those
when you
costs
move-
will now be picked up by
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
mothership.
Yes.
What are the insurance costs for, just for measure?
Yep.
that's-
The insurance line covers the director and officers with EP liability and director and officers excess.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yes, we appreciate
No problem.
So was, in terms of the salaries and fringe, was last year's budget also done on that kind of
I recall
was.
that.
allocation?
And it
Yeah.
makes sense in nonprofit worlds.
Yes,
We do
we
that
do.
all the time
Yeah,
for budgets.
last year's budget was
I carve
reflective
it up all the
of
time. I'm
prorated
like
time for the
10%
team.
from you.
Got it.
So, and this is paid by the developer, right? Yeah, so
By the developer.
it's all good.
And who is that developer?
Right now?
Oh, Greenlaw.
Green?
And they're current on their payments.
ESD. Sure.
Okay, are there any other questions? Oh, I actually had a question. So we, just to raise something that was discussed offline, just to confirm that since last meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about the hiring of a consultant for the community engagement process. Maybe probably worth putting on the record just an explanation of how that is
Sure.
budgeted or not budgeted for, and what the mechanism for payment of that. So in case there are any questions as to why there's no line item for consulting fees, there'll be
Yeah.
an explanation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Chair. It would be part of any cost agreement that we would enter into with future development teams, should there be a change in development teams, because that would be what would be triggering the community process. We, as to your point of speaking offline, we do have experience as an agency in starting those processes while setting up the agreements and making sure that they, begin when they need to be beginning.
And then once we have a developer, they will be directly billed for the cost.
will,
of
and we hold the
developer,
contract.
of the consultant.
Yes, we hold the contract.
Okay. So there's no need to budget for a consultant in this budget. Ron?
That means that we could not engage a consultant to decide to undertake a plan
Yeah.
before we have a developer, to really decide on what the scope of the developer might be, whether it should be both sides or one side or whatever.
I think that is the case. Go ahead.
Why,
If that's the case, how do we amend the budget if we ever want to come to that conclusion? Which may be difficult to achieve, but I would like to know if that's a possibility.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Would the agency be willing to contribute it? Do we have to then come back and modify the budget?
We really do think the most realistic and honestly best practice is to do it when you have a developer on hand. When you have the partner, you understand what they believe and you can bring it to the community and not work in complete hypotheticals that you have no idea if they will match what is even possible to be done. Both because you don't want to oversaturate people in terms of outreach and then try to go back to the same people and bring them another public process to their chagrin. We do think it's most responsible to do so with a developer in hand.
Situation where there are some people who believe there should be a separation of site 5 over from the platform sites. Some of us believe, maybe I do, that we should have one overall plan, and one might want to have a consultant tell us which makes sense from a financial point of view, just to understand what the financial dynamics might be of separating the two and losing the ability to have a cross-subsidization within the overall plan. Or in other words, it may condition who and how we pick developer or developers.
Well, I guess I would ask the agency, do you have in-house expertise that could inform us on those questions? That without the need to engage an outside developer, outside consultant, I keep saying
In terms of a
developer instead
financial
of consultant.
analysis? In terms of a
Yeah,
financial-
well, I think you're talking about a financial
Yes,
analysis.
yes, we do.
That would be part of the process.
So,
Yes.
but if you did it internally, how would they charge the money? It wouldn't be to this, it would be to ESD's general budget then? Okay,
If we did that.
so it can't be, we can hold that as an option going.
It
Correct.
wouldn't be,
Yeah.
yes, this would not preclude it.
Gib, you had your hand up.
well, I think I want to save most of what I was going to say for the part of the program when we start talking about the future of this project right now. because it's not clear to me the future of this project is a single source agreement at this point. So for that reason, I kind of share the concerns I think Director Schiffman is raising.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions specifically related to this budget and whether or not we should approve it?
Just a question on the percentage for the fringe rate, just so that I had a general standpoint in terms of what we utilize.
41%.
41%.
41%.
Wow, is that-
Wow.
Noted.
Okay.
All right.
All right, any other questions or comments on the budget? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the budget for 25, 26. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further comments on the motion before we vote? All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. At this time, let's move on to our next item. I would ask Anna and any other staff who wish to speak to provide us with whatever update is that they can make with respect to the project.
Great. Thank you, Chair. One update, first off, on the Pacific Park Conservancy. Wanted to make sure to let the board know the Conservancy approved the hiring of new contractors to improve the oversight and maintenance of the park. They will be replacing the services currently done. They have brought on board Street Plus. Some of you may be familiar with them. They're a Brooklyn-based company. They work in well-known spaces like Union Square Park, Madison Square Park Bid, Flatiron Bid. They've also brought on Dubner Landscaping and Construction, who is hired to handle the landscaping portion of the park. They do East Midtown Greenway, Freedoms Park, Hudson Yards. And this reflects feedback we've gotten and the Conservancy has gotten about maintenance in that space.
Could you give us the name again of the company?
Sure. Street Plus is the daily cleaning and security services. Dubner Landscaping and Construction is a landscaping portion.
And sorry, in which spaces? I missed the beginning.
This is the Pacific Park Conservancy. This is the open
Got
space.
it.
Open space.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's not along Atlantic Avenue.
No, this is the apartment.
No, I know, that was,
That would
yeah,
be nice,
I was,
wouldn't it?
I was being facetious. For the minutes, Tamara was being
They're going to be
naughty.
sweeping the rail.
I just was like, if they're right there, just go, sorry.
Two questions about this. The first is, it would be helpful at some point if I could get a contact with somebody operationally at the Conservancy.
Yes.
And that and this relates to something not connected to Atlantic Yards, but instead connected to Vanderbilt Avenue. We sometimes find there's contention for folks who are doing work in Pacific Park for access to Vanderbilt at the time
interesting.
the street is closed. And so it's good for us to kind of know who we need to talk to make sure we try to get ahead of those problems.
I have the phone number I can give you after the meeting.
Okay. And the second, I just kind of would like to hear who exactly is the board of the Conservancy at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Not their names, but like, how did they get there? Who appointed them and the like?
So there's the POA has one representative, and then there's representatives from the different development entities. So the different developers within Pacific Park have representatives that sit on the Conservancy. ESD also has two representatives, myself and one other person.
Okay, so, sorry, remind me who the POA is again.
That's the Owners Association. I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for.
Pacific Owners
Pacific,
Association.
Yeah, Owners
Okay.
Association.
TA of sorts, but
So the
Owners.
and they're different than the developers. The POA is
Correct.
who is the POA if not the developers? Are they the owners of the units at 550?
No, it's representative of the different like shares of the developers. I don't have the exact
include
definition in
tenants?
front of me. I'm sorry?
It doesn't include any tenants?
It includes, it's representative of the existing developed parcels. So.
Residents.
But I'm sorry.
No, it's
not
not a
residents.
tenant.
Okay.
But what are the initial, the POA is Pacific Park Owners Association?
We can get you the exact
Okay,
name. We
we'll get you
just
this.
have the acronym right now.
Okay. At some point, I seem to remember in the foundational documents here, the Conservancy was also supposed to have someone from the Department of Parks and Recreation, and I think also from the community boards. Are those people there?
Outreach has been done to them previously. They have
They've not yet sent a
representatives.
The Parks Department hasn't sent a representative.
At some point they may have, but they have not been in attendance.
Okay.
And what about the community boards?
They have not submitted representatives, and they have been asked. Yes, they have.
It's all three boards? It's,
It
It
is CB2, 6, and 8.
I'll follow up with 6
I'm on 8. I know.
All right.
and 2.
Let's talk. That'd be
I don't know
helpful.
if anyone here is on.
Please.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's 12 directors on that board representing the different developers and
How
the
often do
POA.
they meet?
At minimum once a year, and then as needed, depending upon certain issues that arise.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, again, curious about what the distinction is between who the Pacific Park owners
Sure.
versus the developers are.
Yeah, we'll get
You
that.
do have that one condo building, which is, I think that's fully sold now, and I think the board is fully run by the owners.
We'll get that clarity for the group.
Okay, just helpful to know at
No.
this stage.
It's a fair question. Thank you. That was the entirety of the Pacific Park Conservancy update. Any more questions before I move on? Okay, thank you. So status of new developer, the most recent scheduling of the auction was March 24th, is now the end of April. As has been reported, USIF is no longer pursuing the joint venture with Related that we'd previously spoken about. We have been told there will be a new developer. They have not yet been presented to us. But as we did in the last go-around, we will be keeping the board closely informed on it.
Yes, sir.
So given that it's the 25th of March and the affordable housing deadline is the 31st of May, is it at all possible to vet a developer and effect the transfer of the rail yard rights before the 31st of May? Is that a reasonable timeframe for this to happen? It seems like that was a shorter interval than was required for Related.
Well, it's definitely a relatively short timeline. I think we've already been through that process, so USIF, there's an expectation of what's required and what should be submitted to us. So, yeah, I think we can theoretically do it if we were to receive something in the near term. But as you point out, time is limited there.
Yeah, I guess we have a scenario where we can complete that before the 31st of May and one where we can't. And the one where we can complete it, it seems awfully difficult that the type of restructuring of the project and its entitlements that I think an incoming developer would probably want to talk about could be completed by the 31st of May.
Correct.
That would almost certainly bring us into the need to do an environmental impact statement.
Yeah.
And so so in that instance, what do we do on June 1st when the damages for the failure to meet the affordable housing deadline come due? We could not, effectively the developer has now accepted this under the existing plan and agreements, and those agreements have obligations.
Yeah. So Commissioner Knight was asked this question at her budget hearing by Assemblymember Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And the response was, and holds true, that absent us receiving a permitted developer package and a proposal and a plan prior to that date, we obviously would have to move forward with pursuing the liquidated damages. I think if we were
Against incumbent developer.
yes, if we were to receive something in the very near term, obviously, because we're working with a limited amount of time, we would think about reflecting some kind of more near-term allowance on those liquidated damages, so we can see that we have a plan here.
But
Could you explain what you just said?
Yeah, so if we have a plan in front of us in the next few, we're talking weeks, right? Weeks, then we would want to delay us actually formally requesting those liquidated damages with very clear milestones of what would need to happen in the very near term in order for us not to formally collect those liquidated damages.
I think the disconnect I'm having here is my understanding previously was there was no opportunity to negotiate a new plan with a new developer before a transfer was completed. And so if a transfer is, when you say if we have a new plan, what can you explain what you mean by a new plan in that context?
Well, a permitted developer.
Yeah.
And then we have the opportunity to review a proposal from them.
And an engagement plan to work with the community. Not a fully complete,
Okay.
signed off plan, but a permitted developer package with the qualifications and all the things that we would need to review. An engagement plan for engaging with stakeholders and the contours of what their requests would be that we would then engage.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand the sequence of events here, because I think this is kind of important. The first is we need to have a candidate for a permitted developer presented. And then he has to be vetted. They have to be vetted. And once they are vetted, a transfer can be effected. And they can take on the rights to the development sites over the rail yard. Then they can present a plan. Right, these things, I'm getting the sequence right here, right? They can't present a plan before they've taken
As we currently understand.
to the development parcels.
Assuming if this similar structure were to hold from what we were working with a few months back, then yes, that would be the process, yeah.
Okay, so now they've completed the transfer and they've presented a plan, and there could be some type of community engagement around that plan, leading to an eventual fully fleshed out plan and an environmental impact
Right.
statement.
And a public process for any modifications that would be.
MGPP,
Yes.
right.
Yeah, but that's a plan only for the platform sites. It isn't a plan for the overall plan that the GPP was originally developed. It doesn't include Site 5.
We don't know.
Like that
The
was what we
scope.
were talking about, I'm just gonna say 2 months ago, however long it was. It's longer than I guess, but that's what we were talking about before, the 2 platform sites. We don't know what we're getting presented
I know,
with this
but we don't
new
know
version.
even, at least I don't know, and I don't think anybody around the table knows, what is the entity that is the USIF? Who is it, and why are they able to dictate who the developer is?
Before we get to that, though, I want to just kind of come back to this timeline, because the ESD board can't vote on this new MGPP and complete this until after the EIS has been completed. So the period of time in which we may suspend collection of liquidated damages could be, could be more than a year.
It wouldn't be our intention to have it. When I say near term, I would think that it would be a near term thing, that we would need to be acting in good faith on advancing a community engagement process and an environmental review process.
And
then if
environmental review process in that period of time.
No, it would be, sort of a new trajectory, right? per Gibbs timeline, right? They come in, we do a permitted developer, we engage with the community, and during that time, we'd be setting new timelines and benchmarks and goals. That, and then at some point, we would then start negotiating a new set of legal documents, and in those documents, there would be new timelines.
There's another timing factor
but what-
that your questions don't include, which is that we can readily anticipate that the incumbent developer, if presented with a claim for liquidated damages, is going to make claims of unavoidable delay as a defense to paying those claims. And I don't want anything I'm saying now to be construed as an agreement with those claims. Just we have to acknowledge that factor is going to play into the timing as well.
I mean, this is the United States of America. Anyone can file whatever they like here.
No.
And I'm not a lawyer, but I've spent some time looking over the agreements and how they talk about unavoidable delay. And I don't think it would be easy to claim unavoidable delay in the way that it's characterized in
And
the
we're
NDA.
not the
But anyway.
arbiters of that. We're just
No.
acknowledging that those claims are out there and will likely be asserted in response to any collection of damages attempt.
I guess what I'm really asking is, somewhere in that timeline, developer X is going to say, hey, are you going to make me pay the $1.7 million a month? And what's my new deadline, and what's my new extended build date? And it doesn't seem like those questions could be held until the time the board approves the new MGPP and any modifications to the, in fact, actually, we don't even know if we're changing the MDA in its entirety. We're just coming up with a new plan for these LLCs that happen to own the development rights over the rail yard, because we still have Site 5 sitting over there, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen to that. But where in this process do you see coming down to brass tacks with a new developer on something like that? It can't.
At some point, right, we're gonna somebody engaging with the community, working on the contours of whatever the next phase of this is going to look like. And at some point, you reach the end of that process, right? And at that point, you start working on whatever deal has been reflects that process. It's not necessarily when you get to the end of post-environmental. Right?
Yeah.
I imagine you're right. They're gonna at that point need to know.
Sure.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
We haven't fully, mapped out yet the exact timeline.
What concerns me is that we are waiting for an entity we really don't understand, USIF, that apparently, from what I read, and the most knowledgeable source of information has been what Norm Oder has been writing in his blog, okay? And if we believe USIF does not have any of its own money in the deal, there is no incentive on their behalf to come forward with a developer.
But there is, because if nothing is presented by May 31st,
The penalties apply.
The USIF doesn't have anything to lose. They don't have anything to lose. They don't have any money in it.
Except the collateral.
And they did pay. Didn't they make the last payment to the MTA on the rail yard rights?
I want to know who USIF is. I want to know if they're a reliable enough entity to bring forward a new developer. I want to know why ESD isn't looking at an alternative to the development of this site, because we are waiting for a failed set of people to deliver what's there, to continue delivering in the future. To get to the point that Gib is asking a sequence, I don't even know if we'll ever get there based on what we have.
But we're pursuing this on two tracks, right? We're seeing if a viable plan can emerge from these entities, and if not, we go the other track. with a
And penalty.
No, you're going with the other track.
track?
What's the other track?
collection of the
Of
liquidated
liquidated
damages.
damages.
That's one thing, but what about completing the project?
That's-
There was a really good.
Okay, where
There's-
what I think, Arden is, but correct me if I'm wrong, what I think she's trying to say, where they intersect is that the collateral for this debt are these two LLCs, the membership rights in these two LLCs. If ESD were to pursue collection against those entities, those that are in foreclosure, and they don't pay, that impairs the collateral for this debt, because those entities would then be in default under the agreement. So that,
Who are those entities? Tell me their names.
There are two LLCs that now are owned by, are
they're
effectively
currently
owned by
owned,
Greenland.
still owned by Greenland, because
Okay.
the foreclosures haven't
Yeah,
gone
but they're not the
through.
ones,
But
but Greenland is not the one we're asking to come forward with
But
the
where there,
development.
what incentivizes is the entity that's been called the lender, which is has been pointed out, likely a misnomer. They need to be concerned that their collateral that they're trying to foreclose on is not impaired by by default in paying those penalties.
What do they lose? They lose other people's money that they've
They-
used a federal program
Well,
that
they
shouldn't exist.
Right, so
To
they'd be
take money
answerable
from
in
other
whatever way
people
they are
trying
to
to get
their
green
investors.
cards.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear an answer to
Well,
Bob
there's another
Booker's
entity.
questions that were
involved.
sent in writing from the staff. You've had it for now well over 10 days, those questions. They were put forward in writing, and they represent a whole series of questions around who USIF is and what they're doing and what their role is. And I would like a briefing on that, so we can ascertain whether we're working with an entity that is reliable moving forward. Because it isn't people it isn't Greenland who's at fault. It's just this group, Mastrani and company.
You can say Greenland is at fault at some level.
They're reliable.
Yeah, certainly.
I think some of the people.
It's
at the state
Greenland
They're
probably
responsible
feel
now
that
for
way.
bringing forward the new developer, are they?
No, but they're
They
responsible
can't.
for not
They don't control
delivering
the sites anymore.
the required
But-
number of units.
But yeah.
Yeah. But USAF is an entity that ESD approved. We consented to this structure, and they are who we are dealing with.
But but there's another entity involved as well, which is Fortress, and as to which there's some question as to the percentage of the debt they now hold. And I don't think ESD was involved in proving them, or were you?
I mean, if we were looking forward, anything that we get will be reviewed in terms of Fortress's involvement, USIF's involvement, their breakdown in the entities, their ownership, and kind of that's the forward-looking view. What we know now is that Fortress has a percentage of the debt with USIF, and that's the extent of what we have right now.
What happens if they don't come forward with a reliable developer?
But then we go forward with the liquidated
Yeah.
damages request.
I know, but what happens to the project?
We are bound to development. We are bound to a development
collecting
agreement.
anyhow, right?
We are bound to a
Going on
development
that
agreement.
assumption.
We're bound to a development agreement that allows us to collect liquidated damages. If we don't seek liquidated damages, then we can default the development entities that are in that development agreement. Those are our tools in terms of getting a new players here.
But we are hopeful
Yes.
that this new team will bring forward a development team for our review, and that they will be qualified and they will start engaging with stakeholders such as yourselves.
Yep.
So, with respect to that second alternative, if we end up having to pursue collecting the damages, I think based on what is sort of understood about Greenland's current position, that, as Joel said, would probably bring us to a place where they end up defaulting under the obligations of the MDA. And my understanding is that would then give ESD the ability to terminate the development leases, which would then give ESD the ability to market those leases to other developers. And so at that point, you'd have a scenario where you could perhaps pursue an approach that could reduce some of the project risk that has kind of gotten us to where we are now, where all of the eggs were in one basket that turned out to be not a very safe basket. So in my view, I mean, that is certainly not the hoped for outcome, but it's an outcome that would allow us to move forward with a plan that could potentially address some of the realized risks of the current plan.
Why isn't the ESD now working on that alternative in the event that it will occur, so that you are beginning to see
Maybe
who
that
the
should be,
players might be
maybe
that
they are.
will bring
Maybe
in?
that should be a question.
I mean, I think we've gone through this many board meetings. If we're working on our goal would be to have a community engagement process. Right now, we are waiting for a development entity to come forward to be a permitted developer, present a proposal, and then do engagement, with those, as pardon, using her words, broad contours in mind. That's where we are right now. We have 2 months until we know whether or not we will be collecting seeking that, June 1st payment, and seeing what happens at that point.
And I, to be honest, I would kind of more look forward to a scenario where ESD ends up back in control of all the development leases again, forms an LDC and starts bidding them out for development in a way that could.
Well, but I would prefer looking at how that would function today rather than waiting another 3 or 6 or 8 months.
Yeah, Drew had his hand up.
Just a question in terms of necessarily, what's the timeline to review any proposed developer once we essentially necessarily get it, if you get it before that May 30th date, right? So are we saying that, hey, we have the developer or a name was given to us, now we're in the process of reviewing it, just to kind of figure out how we're going to necessarily, how we're going to collect, if at all, those liquidated damages after June 1st. So is there a timeline, or are we just saying that the current entity has to just give us a name and then they're off the hook as far as necessarily making those payments? Just so that I understand exactly what is going on.
They certainly wouldn't be off the hook. And as Joel said, we would be putting in place benchmarks which they would need to be hitting during the review in terms of providing documents, in terms of, it can't be dragged out or anything like that, if that's the concern.
No, understandable. So parallel to that, are we essentially necessarily vetting that developer prior to that name happening? Because again, what if we know that XYZ developer that they are presenting has either financial troubles in order to necessarily qualify for a particular site, or is having other issues necessarily with the state?
We basically ask for some information, right? We ask for, org charts and, JV agreements, things like that, right? And then we do our own review of those technical, legal, business documents that we do get. We also do a determination of responsibility and a vet of the entities that would be presented to us. So for that, and then in terms of the timing of what that takes, I can't put an exact timeline on it, but I think we'd at least need a few weeks at minimum to do all that thoroughly.
We did go down the road with the previous iteration, reviewing documents, getting, pretty far along to reviewing that. So if this new proposal kind of mirrors that structure or someone's stepping in, it might be a quicker review than even last time. Yeah.
I just think.
Go ahead, Kim.
I just believe that we need to kind of zoom out a little bit and appreciate that the idea of moving forward under the current plan to then modify the current plan with another single developer objectively just seems like an extraordinary risk at this point. I mean, we're at where we are right now because the agent of the lenders thought they had a developer who has experience building over a rail yard in New York City, and then that developer, left the deal for whatever reasons they had. Prior to that, there didn't seem to be a lot of interest in on the part of other developers in participating with them, developing those rights that they got from the collateral. And they ended up with the collateral because the previous developer defaulted on their loan, and they weren't able to actually develop the entitlements either. And they came after the previous developer didn't have the capital and the capacity to complete the project and complete the entitlements.
They meaning Greenland came in.
Came in after Forest City was not able to complete the project. So the idea that somebody will appear now, literally at the 11th hour, and sort of solve all the problems has a little bit of a Lone Ranger vibe to it. I mean, I think it's possible, but it seems extremely unlikely and if it did happen, if developer X was presented as somebody who could actually do this, I think we'd all have to look at that and understand the risks of what that means after everything we've been through and at this late stage in the game. And I'm saying this with respect to the idea of the collection of damages. I mean, I would not feel comfortable foregoing the liquidated damages for an extended period of time on the basis of somebody who kind of appears, so late in the process. I mean, let's see who that person is, but it's hard to feel comfortable about that. The liquidated damages represent the value of affordable housing that everyone agreed 11 years ago this project was supposed to provide to people who need it in Brooklyn. And I don't think it's morally acceptable for the public to be put out in that way at this stage. I mean, I want to see the project move forward, absolutely, but to have the public forego that compensation, given all of the risks that have been taken by developers, by lenders, by the state of New York, I just don't think the public should be the one who bears the burden of not being left out for the damages. That doesn't seem.
Well, it doesn't seem like anyone's talking about foregoing the damages. The question is just the timing and against whom they're sought.
Yeah.
The timing is really important right now because in reality, no developer is going to be building for a couple of years. And that means if you defer this amount of money, we're going to be losing it when we could use it in 2, 6, and 8 right today. And so getting that affordable housing now is important.
Well, you would be getting the money.
Money,
Not
yeah,
the
yeah.
housing.
But again, we would be getting that money at a time when the city is making some fairly significant commitments to affordable housing in the immediate area around the project.
But let me
In neighborhoods that are among
Can I
the.
just ask, I mean, your two-track hypothesis doesn't preclude proceeding against the incumbent developer full steam ahead while you're trying to get the USIF to come forward with a new developer.
Once you've transferred, it would.
Yeah.
Once you've
Once,
Once the foreclosure or.
right, which would be an early step.
So that's the period I'm worried
getting
about.
into questions that relate to legal rights. So I'm mindful of that. So, but it seems, as Gip has pointed out, or someone pointed out, this was a commitment with respect to the whole project,
Right. But
not just the platform sites.
what in the world where we collect the damages, what do you think happens to the sites? Like, I mean, in during that time, you wouldn't be getting any housing there.
You may not get housing anyhow for a while. Look at what's happening in Washington, the ripple effects that are going to impact in the state. There won't be ways of, subsidizing that project. And we've lost any opportunity to get public investment in the infrastructure because we've been pushing that on to the private developer, which would only add to the cost of the housing. Building on those sites platform sites may now be impractical for the near future.
So I want to say, I don't believe under any city of New York administration, the Department of Housing Preservation and Development would be upset about getting $1,750,000 a month to go towards preserving and creating affordable housing in neighborhoods that are experiencing some of the highest displacement rates in New York City. I just don't think they'd be upset about that at all. I think that money would be able to be used.
In a public outcome.
Yeah, and on the other hand, and I really, I've said this before, I really think that whatever outcome we get from this, we want the public to have confidence in it, and the public needs to have confidence in it because there are real commitments with real consequences if the commitments aren't met. And if that doesn't happen in this case, it'll be very difficult for us to sell that idea, I think. So I think these two things, I think we have to keep in mind. We have something here of value that was supposed to be used to mitigate a severe housing crisis in this part of Brooklyn. And we have to be considerate of the credibility this new plan will have with the public. So I know that's not easy, right? But I think that's the reality.
All right, Anna, we
No,
interrupted your outline, your
You did not.
presentation.
No, you did
Okay,
not.
Okay, so then, is there anything
that
further
was the
that?
entirety of my updates now.
Does anyone else have any further comments or questions at this time?
I would like to know if there's any reply to Bob Buca's.
Well, I was going to, that's sort of, it's relevant to the public comment section, so I was going to.
But the questions are substantive. And
Yes.
they've been before us and they need to be answered.
Well, they're now before us in the sense that at this meeting, these were comments submitted for this meeting. And I just so everyone knows what we're talking about.
Every time you want to bring it up.
Okay, why don't we get to it now, since I think we're moving into the public comment section, and I just would acknowledge that we did receive in three installments some public comments from Mr. Robert Puca, who's a member of Community Board 8, resident of that district. And these comments take the form of a long list of questions organized helpfully into different subject areas. And I'd like to thank Mr. Puca. He's provided us public service in organizing the questions that I think many of us have with respect to the current status of the project. And I would request, ESD to take those questions under advisement. If there are any that, I think some of them have been at least partially addressed in this discussion. I don't know if there's anything further to be said on that now, but with respect to all those questions, I'd ask that the staff determine, those that they can answer, those that require further investigation, discussion with other relevant players. And I don't know if there's anything further you're in a position to say at this point with respect to any of those questions. And otherwise, we would request that there be an update at the next meeting on those. And if there's anything that requires that we go into executive session, consider that as well.
No,
Okay.
at this time, the information that we were able to share has been presented. I do think a number of them were addressed in this meeting, but I hear your request for an update.
Ron, I don't know if that takes care of the item for the moment, but that's, I think the best way to deal with it. I do think we need, the first couple of questions that have to do with identifying the specific entities that are responsible for meeting the two respective deadlines that were referred to, which is, there was a May 12th deadline for starting the platform and a May 31st deadline obviously for, as we've discussed, for delivering the remaining units of affordable housing. And it'd be helpful, I think, for everyone to know specifically what entities those are that hold those, that currently hold those legal responsibilities. And then, obviously, there's a whole host of other questions too.
I mean, the entities are controlled by Greenland. The names.
I mean, we have to address this before. I know that it's a very confusing kind of, structure of companies, as we've discussed, but it's the parties who are currently parties to the development agreement who have been, either it's been assigned or, other parties. It's Greenland, but it's the entities that are parties to the development agreement or have succeeded other parties to the development
Through
agreement.
assignments.
Through assignments.
Yes. Okay.
Right, and those entities now are owned by Greenland, but they are the collateral.
Two of them are the collateral.
Two of them are the collateral that have been foreclosed upon, which transfer can't be complete.
Have not.
Well, the foreclosure can't be, they're in
foreclosure, but the foreclosure sales have not been completed, which is a significant.
Right. And again, I'll point out that I'm sure that the folks who entered into those loans and the agents for the lenders understood the collateral they were buying and understood what would happen if they had to collect it and what obligations they would have to ESD in order to complete the transfer. So I think they took all of those risks on with their eyes. I have to assume they took those risks on with their eyes open, and they are where they are at this point. Could I ask, is it possible for us to get a meeting on the calendar for the?
I was going to raise that as well. I think it would be helpful, just given all this, all these factors that are in play and that will come into greater focus as we get toward the end of May, to perhaps have a meeting in May, or if either in late April or mid-May, I think would be helpful. Yes.
Before we move on, I really want to ask one quick question around Site 5.
Okay.
As been pointed out by Bob in his email or in his statement or questions to us, he follows up on something I had raised about what I thought was the overdevelopment of Site 5 and what has been our understanding of the proposed agreement or consent that you get allowed to go forward with Site 5. That's an FAR of 25.5, 10 FAR greater than the tallest building on Flatbush Avenue. That, to me, goes back to the carrying capacity of whether this community can provide the kind of social and physical and environmental support for that kind of a population, particularly if it's housing or whatever use it is. It will really overwhelm the environmental carrying capacity of this area. It's 25.5 FAR. That's unheard of in Brooklyn. And I think I would like to put that on the record, and I would like you to come back and really rethink what you have given preliminary approval to or consent to consideration. It really is an untenable set of a proposal for development. I really wish that before you enter into any agreements like that the public processes take place and that our board can really consult with you on what the kind of development should take place on that site. shouldn't just be a dollar generator. It's got to be something that contributes to the quality of life in the city of New York and the borough in particular.
Well, I don't think anyone's talking about it being purely a dollar generator. The issue is generating housing, affordable housing.
And well, housing is one thing, but creating shelter is really important, but creating viable and healthy communities is more important. And those kinds of buildings will wind up having a whole slew of one-bedroom and studio apartments, and they won't meet the needs of New Yorkers for 2-3 bedroom apartments right now.
Not if we have
And
a
it's not the
community
kind of
engagement
environment you wanna
process that
bring back.
insists on creation of different configurations of housing.
That's why maybe getting the money from this project and transferring it to other sites might be the most appropriate vehicle.
Anyone else have anything further?
Different subject, but going back to community engagement, you guys have completed your RFI process, right? So you have responses from potential consultants. I think that was reported at the last meeting, but have you, I would imagine since there's no immediate engagement in the offing, you haven't decided on which consultant would be
We haven't
retained.
finalized like the scope. We would come to
Okay.
you with the scope of work, right? Like all that we've talked about before, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other new business? Oh, I just have an item I just wanted to recommend. There's coming up a city and state affordable housing summit, I think they call it. I attended it last year, and I found it very useful, and I would commend it to all of my fellow directors and ESD staff that to attend. I think it'll be interesting. I forget, I don't have the date handy, but if there's a public notice about it, I just thought I'd mention that. Hearing no other new business or old business, actually, I think we did say that we would have, even though we had public comments submitted, we do need to afford an opportunity at this meeting for any members of the public to make comments orally, briefly. I did say that at the outset. So I see that Mr. Puka has his hand up.
I'll be very short. Out of all the questions I submitted, the only thing that wasn't discussed today was if Greenland is able to move the bulk of the unbuilt B1 tower, which was once slated to loom over the arena to Site 5, then the owner of the arena company, which ESD Global, they basically would gain a huge benefit from making the plaza permanent. So I wanted to know, again, just a comment, I'm wondering if ESD has considered requiring ESD Global to pay for the privilege of having a permanent plaza. There was supposed to be Miss Brooklyn was supposed to be built there. It's not getting built there. If that bulk gets moved over to Site 5, I think the public, since we're talking about the public, really needs to have BSC Global fund, for example, Brooklyn Speaks, that organization, they suggested that a quality of life enforcement unit would be a great idea for BSC Global to fund. I would totally endorse that. As a person who's lived right next to this project for 22 years now, I can tell you that my quality of life has definitely gone down in those 22 years. My family's quality of life has gone down, and I think a lot of that's just my personal opinion. So that's my comment. And also I appreciate all the directors here. I appreciate all the hard work that everyone does, and I appreciate the fact that my comments that I emailed were actually entered into the record. So I want to thank everyone for that. I appreciate everyone discussing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. I actually did, the mention of BSC reminded me of one other. Do we have any update on the basketball courts and program? No?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
This is-